Hey guys, so it's me, Nicolette Mashile. I am also known as the Financial Bunny. Welcome to the Financial Bunny TV as we wrap up July Savings Month. I want to talk about how to choose a savings account that works for you. Remember, it's not for everybody else because personal finance is just that. It is personal. It is to you. It is about you. It is for you. Now, before I get into today's video, please remember that none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are, however, looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody who is certified and registered with the FSCA. And in today's specific video, because I'm going to be talking about how to choose a savings account, there will be some savings account, real savings accounts that I'm going to refer to. And this is not product recommendation, but rather for educational purposes only. Right, so let's get into it. Step number one that you need to do before you can even start choosing a savings account is to figure out what is the reason for the savings account. What is the reason that you want to put money away? What is the goal that you are trying to reach? And the reason why I say this is because if you think about your goal being an emergency savings account, you need accessibility to that money because an emergency happens now. It doesn't come knocking and say, hey, by the way, Kadi 30 August, I'm going to have an I'm going to create an emergency and we're going to need this money, right? An emergency happens out of the blue, it's unforeseeable, and you might need to respond financially with it. And what you don't want is to be frustrated because where your money is sitting, it's tied up in the account rules or whatever it is that's restricting you from having access to that money. So the first and most important thing is to figure out what is the goal for the money so that you can figure out what it is that you want to save that money for, or rather way to save that money for. If let's say you say to me, no, listen, we're going to be putting in a tombstone at the end of the year for your grandmother or your mom, and we need to save up to that amount of money, but we'll only need it in December, then you can use something like a 32-day account because it's a call account. You have to give a certain notice for you to be able to access that money. Then you know that in November, you can put in the notice that you want your money, and then you will get it by the date that you need it on in December, right? If you say to me, no, Nicolette, I'm actually just looking somewhere to park my money, I'm not really I'm sure what I want to do with this money, then obviously the first thing we would say to you is split it, put some in investing and put some in savings. However, we're talking about savings today, so you would then look at things like your money market account, or you're looking for a fixed deposit account, and here you could potentially be looking at something that beats inflation, because obviously inflation over 5 years is significant versus inflation over like a couple of months. We saw inflation last month sitting at 2.8, and this month it's sitting at 3%. So that's quite a small shift, a significant one at that, because obviously we've seen that inflation also looks different when it comes to different areas of our life. Education inflation is high, grocery inflation is high, or meat or fresh produce inflation is much higher in South Africa if you are not looking at the holistic inflation, right? So inflation over 3 to 5 years is going to be much more impactful to your value of your money versus inflation over a couple of months. So you want an account then that is going to beat inflation in terms of the return that you are getting on there, right? So that's also important. Then the first and probably most important thing that you need to look at after you have looked at what is the goal that I am trying to reach with these savings, or what is the intention with the savings account that I want to actually put money into, is you've got to look at if you do have this intention of parking money. For instance, let's say you have an additional 100,000 rand that's just sitting around and you want to park it somewhere. Then obviously you're going to be looking at an account that's going to give you an interest return, right? So you're looking for an account that's going to give you a rate of return. Now that rate of return, you need to be able to understand the difference between the nominal rate and the effective rate. The nominal rate and the effective rate. And to paint it in a much more better picture, or rather use a common metaphor that many of us will understand. Think about it when you're thinking about gross income or gross salary versus your net salary, right? Your gross income is the income that does not have deductions yet deducted from it, right? So this is the amount that we all wish would hit our bank account. And then the net salary is the one that actually does hit your bank account, right? And this is after all the deductions that need to happen on your salary. It could be tax, it could be UIF, it could be skills development, development. In some cases, it could be employee benefits, where both you and the employer are contributing, like medical aid, retirement fund, or a pension fund rather, and some group life benefits that you are also contributing to, while your employer also matches your contributions. So those would be the deductions, right? So you've got to think about that, because often what we see, and it makes sense, right? When you drive down the N1 in Johannesburg and you see a big billboard that says 13.5% interest return, you need to understand that that return is most probably the nominal rate. Most probably the nominal rate, because that's the one that gets advertised, that's the one that is attractive. However, some of the financial institutions do try to keep their deductions as less as possible, so that they can get you as close as possible to that nominal rate. It is important for you to understand that that nominal rate that gets advertised is not the effective rate that you are going to get as money in your pocket and as money that you can use, rather the value of the money. Because think about inflation this way. A couple of years ago when I was in high school, and now I'm telling you guys my age, I could buy a can of Coca-Cola cool drink and a branded pie, king pie, for 10 rand. I could buy both of them. I think one was like 4 rand or 3 rand 50, and the other one was 6 rand 50 or something like that. I literally could buy a king pie and a cool drink from Coca-Cola, sometimes squeezer. But you could get those two things for 10 rand. Right now, you can't get them. And the worst thing that could happen to you is that you park your money into an account. This year, the value that you're getting is 100,000 rand. And then after 5 years, the value you're getting from that money is only 90,000 rand. That is the worst thing that can actually ever happen to you. I always imagine it is when you're running the 100 meters, and this is you and this is inflation, and you're both running. And then when you get to the finish line, you need to make sure that your money crosses the finish line before inflation crosses it. Because if you find yourself with inflation crossing before you, it means that your money did not retain its value of today's value after 5 years. Not a good thing, right? The next thing that you need to be considering is, of course, fees, because fees will eat away at returns. Fees eat away at returns. It has been the harshest lesson that myself and my Stokvel members, our property Stokvel members, had to learn. Fees will eat away at your money. Now, luckily, when you're choosing a savings account, you're not really having a financial advisor involved, because they also have financial advisor fees. Here, you're looking at the actual institution's fees. So banking fees, it could be transactional fees, it could be account management fees. So if you look at, for instance, the FNB Money Maximizer account, it has a fee. It's got a 65 rand fee. I do know that if you open the account, though, via the app, the FNB app, they waive the fee off. But it has a 65 rand fee if you don't open it via the FNB app. Then the other thing that it also has is what we call transactional fees. But the transactional fees are only applicable if you take the money out of the FNB ecosystem. So let's say you decide to now take that money maximizer, the money that you've saved in your money maximizer account, and you want to send it to a different bank account that you've got that is outside of the FNB ecosystem, then you're going to get clapped by transactional fees. So fees are something that you have to look at. And yes, 65 rand may look small, but it accumulates. Over the months, you're paying it every single month, it does accumulate, right? So it's important for you to understand those fees, because the fees are what is going to be deducted from the return that you make from this nominal rate. The fees that are part and parcel of the account. Then the next thing is the rules of the account. The rules of an account are also important, because they have their own people. You know how you guys in South Africa like talking about tax brackets? The account of rules also has tax brackets. So I'll give you maybe 5 different bank accounts that seem to be comparable, but they've all got different rules, right? And maybe not 5, let's do 3, right? Let's do 3, yes. So I'm going to speak about the FNB Money Maximizer. I'll speak about the Investec Prime Saver account, and I'll speak a little bit about ABSA's Cash Invest Tracker account, right? Perfect. Now, first and foremost, the FNB Money Maximizer account has a couple of fees. We've already spoken rules. We've already spoken about their fee. The other rule that they have is that the minimum deposit into this account has to be 100,000 Rand. So you can't have a balance that's less than 100,000 Rand. You will not be able to access this account. On the Investec Prime Saver account, you can open the Prime Saver account whether you are banked by Investec, so you're a private banking client, or if you're not a private banking client. However, there are rules. If you are banked by Investec and you're a private banking client of Investec, the minimum amount that you need to deposit in there is 1 Rand. So you could deposit any amount from 1 Rand all the way up, right? Now, why is this important? It's important because not everybody can be banked by Investec. Not everybody gets an Investec private banking account. There's a set of qualifying criteria that you need to meet before you can be banked by Investec. Then, if you look at the ABSA cash tracking, I don't know what the full name of this account is, but it's called the ABSA Cash Invest Tracker account, right? They also, like Investec, say if you are not privately banked by ABSA, then you need to put in a minimum amount of 100,000 Rand to be able to access this account. If you are banked by them, also 1 Rand is the minimum that you need. So already this shows you that the rules of the account already will channel you to a specific account that is suitable for you. The other rule that is very, very important is on the FNB Money Maximizer account, if you withdraw even just 50 Rand of that 100,000 Rand and your balance goes below the 100,000 Rand, you no longer earn interest on that account. If your balance goes below 100,000 Rand, and they're very quick to send you the email or the message on the app to say, hello, your balance is below 100,000 Rand. If your balance goes below 100,000 Rand, you can no longer earn any interest on that account. So again, another rule on the FNB Money Maximizer account you need to be aware of, right? And then, for instance, maybe let me bring in another account, and it's called the Nedbank Money Trader account, right? On the Nedbank Money Trader account, they have a minimum deposit amount of 50,000 Rand. So half minimum requirement from these other 3 accounts, but they say if you want to make additional deposits into that account, they need to be 5,000 Rand or more. So now there's a rule that they're putting if you want to make additional deposits into that account, whereas all the others allow you to make any additional deposits into that account. This one says you have to make 5,000 Rand and above. So for me, it also says to you that if you have, like, for instance, you find yourself with a tax refund of like 3,000 Rand and you want to put it into savings, you want to park it where your money is already attracting a good interest rate from the Money Trader account, unfortunately, you have to wait until you've got 5,000 Rand or more. However, this account has a less requirement for you to be able to access it. So all of these accounts will come with their own set of rules that you need to be aware of. And if you look at now, going back to the nominal rate, if you look at the rates of these different accounts, you'll find that the ABSA one is got the highest minimum rate of return when it comes to the nominal rate, right? I think the ABSA one is sitting at 7.65 for balances below 12.5 million. And if you go above 12.5 million, then you get a rate of up to 7.85%. The Investec one is linked to Prime, so it will be very interesting to also see what happens to that rate after 31st of July when SARB's MPC makes a decision on the whether they're going to cut or they're going to keep the repo rate as is. We're crossing fingers they don't increase it. See, I didn't even want to talk about increasing it because we don't want to even entertain that conversation about the increase at all, right? So again, that's a different interest rate altogether, or rather, the other accounts all have their own. I think FNB's Money Maximizer has a starting rate of 7.4%, if I'm not mistaken, and then Investec is linked to Prime, and then ABSA is 7.65, below 12.5 million, above 12.5 million is 7.85. I mean, to be quite fair, I'm just wondering who keeps 12.5 million rand in a bank account. But look, the option is there for those who do keep it. And then the money trader account, I can't really fully understand. I can't remember their rate, but it's also a very competitive rate in comparison to all the other banks. So again, that is something that you need to be looking at in terms of what is the rate and what are the fees that are going to be deducted and what are the rules of this account. Then the next one is obviously access to funds. I think it's important to be able to access your funds depending on how quickly you want those funds. All of those accounts allow you to access your funds almost immediately, right? Some may take like 24 hours, but it's almost immediately. So that is also great, because what you don't want is to find yourself in a situation where you've put money away, it is for emergencies, or you've parked it, but an emergency comes up and now you can't access your funds. So accounts like a fixed deposit account would not work. 32-day account would not work for a goal where you need to access that money, because what you don't want to find yourself in is having an asset that is not liquid. Like many South Africans, because of how we invest, sometimes our investment advice is taken from YouTube channels and whatever, and it's a little bit all over the place, and you find yourself over investing in a certain asset class. And that was something that happened to me. When I broke my ankle, I realized that I was overly invested in property and real estate, which meant that when I needed cash, because I wasn't working, when I had broken my ankle, all of a sudden I'm now assets rich, but I'm cash poor. And then my savings account, some of them were fixed deposit, some of them were actually savings accounts that were linked to investments. And I'll talk about that, because that Absa Cash Invest Tracker account is linked to an investment. It's linked to the performance of an index that they are tracking, right? So it's similar to if you get a TFSA, but a tax-free shares account, because you are basically linking a savings account to an investment, right? So the returns are based on investments that you are tracking, or performance from an investment, or you've actually given the account an exposure to investment assets like the tax-free shares account. So that's also something you've got to consider, is what exactly am I putting my money into, and what format is my money going to stay in? Because you know that if you're putting it into a money market account, like for instance the Standard Bank's money market select account, it stays as cash. If you're putting it into the FNB money maximizer, it's a deposit, it is staying in cash. If you put it into the Prime Saver account, it is in cash. So it is at its probably the most liquid format. So accessibility to that money is quite easier. Then there's a thing called compounding frequency. So how many times does the interest, or rather the money, compound in the account, right? So this is very important, because the more frequent the compounding, the more money you are going to make in terms of returns. So remember, when we talk about compounding, we're talking about compounding interest, right? Or the power of compound interest. If you put money away today, whatever interest you earn on that money, if it compounds monthly, it means that in month number 2, they're going to calculate the compounding on the total that you have deposited, plus the compounding or the interest you earned from last month. So then on the month 2, you're going to get the compounding happening on both. Sometimes it compounds daily, sometimes compounds weekly, sometimes it compounds monthly, sometimes it compounds bi-monthly, sometimes it compounds quarterly, and sometimes it compounds yearly. Ask the question. If you don't understand, ask the question. How many times or how frequently does this account compound? So that you can know, or you can kind of project how much you are going to make based on the interest rate that they are essentially offering you, right? Then the last thing that I think you need to take into consideration is the goal that you are trying to save this money for. Could it potentially also be serviced by an investment? And I say this because there's a lot of, and especially women, we are heavily putting our money into savings accounts where we could be giving ourselves some exposure to investments. And if, let's say, for instance, you've got a 5-year goal, let's say you're putting money away to put into a down payment for a car or a house, and you're giving yourself 5 years, there are certain investments that you can potentially consider. Is there risk? Absolutely. There's always going to be risk with any investment that you're going to be making. However, you may get a better return on that money than if you were just parking it in a savings account. So if you're not going to need the money for 5 years, and you are very sure that you're not going to need the money for 5 years, maybe you've got additional or alternative sources of funds, then rather give that money exposure to investments versus just parking it in a savings account. Because the other thing you've got to consider is what is called tax. SARS wants its cut. The moment you start earning any interest as an individual below the age of 65, that is above 23,800, SARS starts adding that amount of money to your taxable income. So that means you're gonna pay tax on that money. Let me say that again. If you find yourself in a situation where you want to park money, and you're parking money in a savings account where it's going to be earning interest, there is interest tax that can be levied against your income. If you are below the age of 65 and you earn interest income that is above the exempted amount, which is the 23,800, you start paying tax on the amount that is above the 23,800. So tax is also important, right? So that's why we're like, find a much more tax efficient way to park this money. Park it in a much more tax efficient way. Right, I'm going to leave it at that because I think I've covered quite a number of the things I wanted to speak about. I'll see you guys in the month of woman. Bye.